Ranger, heel. The German Shepherd did not move. He stood beside the side door of Miller's Auto Repair, ears forward and body rigid, staring into the blowing snow beyond the parking lot. Grant Ramsey tightened his grip on the leash. Ranger, the dog answered with 2 short barks. Not excitement, not fear. A warning. Grant had heard that sound before, years earlier, on roads where engines burned beneath desert heat, and men learned to trust a dog before they trusted their own eyes. Behind him, 8-year-old Eli pressed his face to the office window. His twin brother, Noah, stood beside him with both hands around a thermos of cocoa. Since their mother died 4 years earlier, Grant had raised the boys alone. 6 weeks ago, Pierce Fleet Systems had fired him from the diagnostics job he had held for 13 years. Now, late repair shifts at Miller's were the only steady work he could find. "What does he hear?" Eli asked. Grant looked toward the dark edge of the property. Snow swept across the security light so quickly it seemed to erase the ground as soon as it touched it. The radio had warned that El Paso County might close the road within the hour. The last customer had left 10 minutes earlier. Grant had finished locking his tools and was preparing to take the boys across the property to the small caretaker house behind the garage. Then Ranger had stood up. Grant opened the side door just wide enough to step through. "Both of you stay in the office." Eli reached for his coat. "But Dad, do not cross that door." The tone ended the argument. Grant pulled up his hood, switched on a flashlight, and followed Ranger into the storm. The wind struck hard enough to steal his breath. Ranger lowered his head and moved toward the far end of the gravel lot, favoring his injured rear leg but refusing to slow down. Grant could see only 20 or 30 feet ahead. Then Ranger stopped beside a snow marker near the fence. Something dark moved beneath it. Grant raised the flashlight. An elderly man sat against the post, half covered by drifting snow. His bare hands were locked against his chest. His gray hair was wet, and his entire body shook so violently that his shoulders struck the wood behind him. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man lifted his head, but his eyes struggled to focus. "Garage," he whispered. "I saw the lights." Grant dropped beside him. "My name is Grant. I'm getting you inside." He called 911, gave the dispatcher the address, then pulled off his insulated work coat and wrapped it around the man's upper body. The dispatcher asked whether the man was conscious. "Barely, but he's answering. Do not let him walk unassisted." "I won't." Grant slipped one arm behind the man's back and the other under his shoulder. Ranger stayed tight against the man's other side as Grant helped him stand. The short walk back felt much longer in the whiteout. When they reached the garage, Eli was holding the door open from inside. Noah stood several feet back exactly where Grant had told him to wait. "Close it," Grant said. The boys pushed the door shut behind them. Warm air from the office heater rolled over the old man. Grant sat him in the padded chair near the wall, removed his wet outer coat, and wrapped a dry shop towel around his shoulders. "Sir, look at me." The man raised his eyes. "What's your name?" "Harlan." "Last name?" "Pierce." "Do you know where you are?" "A garage." "Good. Do you feel any pain in your chest?" "No. Just cold." Grant checked that Harlan could answer clearly and swallow without difficulty. Then he nodded toward Eli. "Now." Eli grabbed the thermos from the desk and poured warm cocoa into a paper cup. Noah hurried to Grant's truck, which was parked inside the service bay, and returned with the fleece blanket from the winter emergency kit. He draped it around Harlan's shoulders and tucked the edges against his sides. "Is that too tight?" Noah asked. Harlan shook his head. "It's perfect." Eli held out the cocoa. "It's not too hot." Harlan wrapped both hands around the cup. They still trembled, but not quite as violently. Grant crouched in front of him. "Where's your vehicle?" "About a quarter-mile west. It slid into a ditch." "Why did you leave it?" "The brake pedal went soft before I left the road." Harlan swallowed. "The driver's window cracked when I hit the marker. Snow was coming inside, and the rear of the SUV sank. I thought the exhaust might be covered." "You saw the garage?" "The light. I thought I could make it." Grant glanced toward the storm outside. "You almost didn't." The dispatcher called back. County crews were closing the road. Emergency responders had Harlan's location, but visibility had fallen too low for immediate access unless his condition worsened. They were told to shelter in place. Harlan stared at Grant. "My phone and wallet are still in the SUV. I don't have $1 on me." Grant stood. "I didn't ask." Harlan looked around the garage. A patched ceiling, old tools, a truck with rust along the wheel wells. Two little boys in second-hand winter coats, an aging military dog lying between his feet. You've already done enough. Grant glanced toward the dark windows. My house is behind the shop. It has a wood stove. You're not staying alone in this office tonight. The caretaker house sat only a few hundred feet behind the garage, connected by a narrow service lane. Grant wrapped Harlan in the fleece blanket, put his own coat back around him, and drove the truck slowly across the property while Ranger and the twins rode in the back seat. Inside the house, Grant settled Harlan on the sofa near the stove. The place was small but clean. Two boys' backpacks hung from hooks by the door. A faded army photograph sat above the mantel. Ranger's medicine bottle stood beside a jar of dog treats. Grant handed Harlan his phone. If your daughter doesn't recognize the number, leave a message. Harlan dialed from memory. The call went unanswered. He tried again. Still nothing. Then he left a voicemail. Claire, this is Dad. I'm safe. I'm using Grant Ramsey's phone. Call this number. Less than 2 minutes later, Grant's phone rang. Harlan answered. Claire? A woman's voice came through fast and sharp. Where are you? Are you hurt? I'm safe. Company security called the sheriff after you missed your check-in, and the executive SUV stopped transmitting. What happened? The SUV went into a ditch. You were supposed to call after leaving the old service yard. I know. Tell me exactly where you are. Harlan looked at Grant. Grant took the phone and gave Claire the garage address. The sheriff already has it, he said. The county road is closing. Nobody should try to come in until the visibility improves. Who is this? Grant Ramsey. You found my father? My dog did. Claire exhaled. But the relief in her voice did not soften her authority. I can send a private team. You can send them when the sheriff says the road is open. That could take hours. Then it takes hours. Silence followed. Grant looked toward Harlan, who was watching Eli and Noah unfold a spare blanket on the sofa. Claire finally said, Mr. Ramsey, I don't know how to thank you. Grant watched Noah place one of his own pillows beneath Harlan's head. He was cold. We had heat. He handed the phone back. Harlan listened to his daughter for another minute. Then, before ending the call, he said, Claire Pierce runs Pierce Fleet Systems. Grant's expression changed, only slightly, but Harlan noticed. You know the company? He asked. Grant looked toward the stove. I used to work there. He said nothing more. Dinner that night was chicken, potatoes, and canned green beans. Grant divided everything carefully. The boys received full portions. Harlan's plate was filled before Grant served himself. When everyone sat down, Grant cut the last piece of chicken into smaller strips and placed them in Ranger's bowl beside the dog's joint medicine. Noah looked at his father's nearly empty plate. Dad, you didn't eat your chicken. I had some at the garage. Noah stared at him. Grant lifted a forkful of potatoes. Eat before it gets cold. Harlan understood the lie. He did not expose him in front of the boys. Halfway through dinner, the lights flickered, then went dark. Eli froze. Noah reached for Grant's sleeve. Grant calmly lit the battery lantern on the table. The wood stove is still burning. The boys relaxed. Grant checked the generator and returned 10 minutes later with snow across his shoulders. We have enough fuel for about 2 days if we run it non-stop. And if the road stays closed longer? Harlan asked. We don't run it non-stop. They would stay near the stove and use the generator only to cool food, charge the phone, and keep essential lights working. Noah found a notebook and began marking each hour of generator use. Eli gathered blankets. They trusted their father because he never pretended a problem was smaller than it was. That night, Harlan woke just after 2. The house was quiet except for the wind pressing against the walls. Ranger lay across the hallway outside the sofa. The dog raised his head when Harlan moved. You don't have to guard me, Harlan whispered. Grant stepped from the kitchen carrying another piece of wood. He knows. Harlan glanced at the dog. Knows what? That you're not used to being alone in a strange house. Grant placed the wood in the stove and closed the iron door. Did he serve with you? Harlan asked. 2 deployments. And then you brought him home? Eventually. The Army retired him after the injury, Grant said. There were other placement options. But, Grant watched Ranger lower his head again. He had already done his part. I wasn't letting him spend the rest of his life wondering where his people went. The next morning, the storm worsened. By breakfast, only 1 biscuit was left in the pan. Eli and Noah reached for it at the same time. I saw it first, Eli said. You already had more eggs, Noah answered. I wanted the biscuit. So did I. Their voices rose. Grant drank his coffee without interrupting. The boys looked toward him. He raised one eyebrow. Eli broke the biscuit in half. Noah accepted one piece, studied it, then handed the larger half back. You broke it. Eli tried not to smile. During the second day, Harlan refused to remain on the sofa. He washed dishes, helped Eli repair the axle on a wooden truck, and showed Noah how to mark the generator fuel with clean lines. I thought rich people had someone else do dishes, Eli said. Harlan looked at him. Rich people have hands. Eli considered that. Dad says some bosses make promises about machines they've never touched. Grant's head turned. Eli. What? Noah kicked his brother under the table. Harlan said nothing, but he remembered the sentence. By the third day, the snow had eased, though high winds continued to push deep drifts across the service lane. That afternoon, the flashlight batteries failed. Eli and Noah searched the laundry room for replacements. Noah pulled an old cardboard box from beneath a workbench. A metal nameplate slid against the side. Harlan saw the logo first. Pierce Fleet Systems. Then the name, Grant Ramsey. Senior Fleet Diagnostics Foreman. There was an old photograph inside the box. Grant wore a company jacket and stood between Eli and Noah when they were 5. Both boys held plastic wrenches and smiled at the camera. A termination letter lay beneath the photograph. Harlan could see the date, 6 weeks earlier. He did not lift the letter. You said you used to work for Pierce, he said. Grant stood in the doorway. 13 years. Was leaving your choice? Grant crossed the room and closed the lid. No. Harlan waited. Grant did not continue. So Harlan let the silence remain. That night, after the boys had fallen asleep and Ranger lay near the stove, Harlan sat across from Grant at the kitchen table. The wind had finally quieted. Harlan asked one question. What did they ask you to sign? Grant looked up. The question told him Harlan understood how men were often removed without anyone admitting what they were really being punished for. Pierce was finishing 42 winter response vehicles for county emergency services, Grant said. Harlan nodded. I remember the contract. The original brake hose assemblies were replaced with a cheaper supplier. Approved? Victor said they were. And you? I ran the cold pressure test. Grant's voice remained controlled. The replacement hoses developed small cracks near the fittings. Pressure dropped when the temperature stayed low long enough. Were they guaranteed to fail? No. Were they proven safe? No. What did you recommend? Quarantine the batch. Install the approved parts or repeat the complete test. And Victor? He wanted the vehicles delivered on schedule. He asked you to sign the winter readiness certification. Yes. You refused. Yes. How long before? They fired you? 6 days. Harlan looked toward the laundry room. Do you have proof? I had a report. They kept the system. Grant tapped a closed notebook beside him. I kept my own observations, dates, batch prefixes, test conditions. Nothing that proves why they fired me. Enough to know what I saw. Why didn't you go public? Because suspicion isn't proof. Grant glanced toward the hallway where his son slept, and I wasn't putting my boys through a fight I couldn't finish. Harlan remained silent for a moment. Would you object if I told Claire what you just told me? Tell her what you believe she needs to hear. And what should she believe? Nothing yet. Grant pushed the notebook toward the center of the table. She should preserve the records. After that, she should believe whatever the evidence proves. Harlan borrowed Grant's phone and called Claire. Listen carefully, he told her. There may be a serious problem behind Grant Ramsey's termination. What problem? 42 county vehicles. Cold weather brake components. Victor Sloan. Claire became quiet. Preserve every record before anyone knows you're looking, Harlan said. She ordered legal to retain every project document connected to the county contract. She locked deletion privileges on procurement records and service logs. She directed that all communication regarding Grant Ramsey go through legal, and she instructed Victor not to contact Grant. Within hours, Claire found the basic facts. Grant had been terminated 6 weeks earlier. 42 vehicles had been marked winter ready. A different engineer had signed the final certification. The summary sent to Claire said Grant had refused to follow a corrected testing protocol and had become disruptive in front of a county client. Nothing mentioned cracked hoses. Nothing said the supplier substitution had failed a cold pressure test. Victor called before dinner. Your father is stranded with a disgruntled former employee. My father is safe. Ramsey is using the situation. He didn't know who Dad was. That is what he claims. Claire looked at the preserved files on her screen. The records are staying where they are. You are opening a corporate inquiry based on the story of a fired mechanic. No, her voice hardened. I'm stopping people from deleting the answer before I ask the question. On the fourth day, the county cleared the main highway, though the private road remained buried. When Claire called again, she heard Eli and Noah arguing in the background about whether Ranger deserved another piece of bacon. Then Harlan laughed. Claire stopped speaking. Her father had not laughed since her mother died 2 years earlier. Mr. Ramsey, she said when Grant took the phone. My father sounds different. The storm may have shaken something loose. I'm serious. So am I. She hesitated. My company put your name on a termination report. Yes. I did not order it. Grant looked out the window at Harlan, helping Noah mark another line in the fuel notebook. But it happened under your name. Claire did not defend herself. Yes. That answer mattered. On the morning of the 5th day, the sheriff called. One lane was open. A tow operator could reach the SUV. Grant did not ask Claire about his job. He did not ask Harlan for money. He put on his work boots and said, "We get the vehicle first." The sheriff's deputy met them near the county road. Ranger stayed with Eli and Noah. His injured leg had already carried him far enough through the storm. The SUV had slid nose first into a shallow ditch. It belonged to Pierce Fleet's executive vehicle pool and had been serviced 3 weeks earlier at one of the company's divisions. The tow operator pulled it onto level ground. Grant walked around the vehicle slowly. The driver's window was cracked. Snow had packed against the rear bumper. Near the front left wheel, a dark stain marked the clean snow. Grant crouched. The brake fluid reservoir was low. The hose fitting was wet. He did not touch it. He leaned closer and found a printed batch code on the exposed section. Then he stopped. Harlan watched him. What is it? Grant wiped loose snow from the outer surface without disturbing the fitting. The code began with the same prefix he had written in his notebook 6 weeks earlier. That batch was never supposed to leave the test cage. The deputy stepped closer. What are you saying? I'm saying nobody touches that brake line until it is documented. Grant took time-stamped photographs. He asked the tow operator to record the condition of the wheel assembly. The deputy wrote down the visible leak and the position of the vehicle. Grant called an independent garage rather than a Pierce facility. Harlan watched every step. You knew what to do before you saw the part, he said. Grant stood. I knew what not to do. The SUV was transported to an independent shop in Colorado Springs. A licensed mechanic removed the hose while an outside safety engineer documented the procedure. The component went into a sealed evidence bag. The serial and batch numbers were recorded. Claire authorized access to matching inventory from the Pierce warehouse, but the safety engineer selected the samples at random. Grant proposed a simple test. 1 approved hose. 1 replacement hose from the disputed batch. Both cold-soaked at the same temperature. Both placed under the same controlled pressure. Both recorded on camera. Victor objected before the test began. He appeared by video conference from Pierce headquarters. The vehicle went into a ditch. Any damage could have resulted from impact. That is why the hose from the SUV is not the only sample, Grant said. The laboratory conditions do not represent field use. They match the contract requirement. You are no longer employed by Pierce. That doesn't change the pressure gauge. Victor's jaw tightened. You have a personal motive to discredit this company. Grant looked at the 2 hoses mounted behind the protective barrier. I have a personal motive to keep people alive. The test began. At first, both gauges held steady. 1 minute, 2, 3. The approved hose remained firm. A faint line appeared near the fitting of the replacement hose. Then another. The pressure needle slipped. It continued falling. Grant watched the gauge. That's what I refused to sign. Victor leaned toward the camera. 1 sample does not prove systemic failure. The safety engineer answered. It proves the failure mode exists under the specified conditions. Combined with the leak on the executive SUV and the matching batch across the county fleet, it is enough to remove those vehicles until every unit is inspected. Victor shifted his attack. Mr. Ramsey has controlled this process from the beginning. The tow operator had documented the SUV. The deputy had witnessed its condition. The independent mechanic removed the component. The engineer selected the samples. Every step had been recorded. Grant had never been alone with the evidence. Victor could not break the chain, so he attacked the reason Grant had returned. "You were fired," he said. "Now you have the founder in your home and the CEO opening doors for you." Claire's legal team had released the list of affected vehicles to the independent safety review. Grant placed it on the table. 42 vehicle numbers, 42 drivers. "You keep asking why I came back." He looked directly at the screen. "I came back because 42 drivers are still out there." The joint safety review was scheduled for the following morning. Pierce Fleet's safety committee attended, along with the county fleet representative, the insurance risk officer, the independent engineer, Claire, Harlan, Victor, and Grant. Grant wore a clean work shirt. No uniform. No executive badge. He carried his notebook and the test report. Claire sat across the room, not beside him. Grant laid out the sequence simply. The supplier had changed. The original cold test had raised a warning. Grant had refused to certify the batch. The same batch later appeared on Harlan's executive SUV and in the 42 county vehicles. An independent sample had failed under the required conditions. The county representative leaned forward. "Are these hoses installed on all 42 units?" "Maintenance records indicate they are," the safety engineer said. Victor raised a hand. "There has not been a single fatality, injury, or verified field failure on the county vehicles." Grant looked at him. "A safety report is not a prediction that someone will die." He placed his hand on the folder. "It is the reason they should not have to." Victor turned toward Claire. "You are letting a family matter become corporate policy." Claire's expression did not change. "My father did not create the batch code. He created access. He created an opportunity for us to look." Victor pointed toward Grant. "This man was terminated for insubordination," Grant answered. "I was terminated because I would not certify something the test had not proven." He delayed a critical public contract over a probability. Grant looked down at the list of drivers. "You counted 42 vehicles." Then he looked back at Victor. "I counted the people inside them." Claire stood. "I did not order Grant Ramsey's dismissal." She paused. "But it happened under my name." She looked toward the committee. "We stop the vehicles first. Then we determine responsibility." The committee voted. All 42 units were removed from service pending replacement. The county and insurer were notified. The disputed hose batch was recalled. Victor was suspended from operational authority, and an outside investigation began. Grant's termination was placed under formal review. 5 weeks later, the investigation found that Victor had approved the unverified substitution, ignored Grant's quarantine request, altered the language used in executive summaries, and arranged for another engineer to sign after Grant refused. Grant's disciplinary record had begun only after he challenged the certification. Victor lost his position as chief operating officer. He lost his succession bonus and was removed from the company's leadership plan. On the day the final report was issued, Victor asked to speak with Grant. They met in a conference room overlooking the vehicle yard. Outside, technicians were replacing hoses on the last of the county trucks. Victor looked older than he had during the review. "I told myself the odds were small," he said. Grant looked through the glass at the mechanics working beneath the raised vehicles. "They were small because you were counting vehicles." Victor lowered his eyes. "Not the people inside them," Grant finished. Victor did not ask for forgiveness. Grant did not offer it. Victor watched the technicians replace the final hose and said nothing. Pierce Fleet corrected Grant's personnel file and restored the compensation and benefits he had lost through the termination. Claire asked him to return to Pierce. "What role?" Grant asked. "One that lets you do the work the company should have listened to the first time." Grant studied her. "I'm not taking a position because your family feels grateful. I know. I want the same process anyone else would face." Claire nodded. "What would you accept?" "A fair interview." Pierce created a field safety diagnostics unit reporting to an independent safety committee. Grant updated his certification, completed the interviews, and served a 60-day probationary period. Then he was appointed field safety diagnostics supervisor. By spring, Grant could pay his bills without taking every night shift. Eli and Noah no longer did homework in the garage office 4 evenings a week. Ranger still limped when the weather changed, but he had gained 2 pounds and developed the habit of sleeping beside Harlan whenever the older man visited. Harlan came often. At first, he brought groceries. Grant told him not to. So the next time, he brought a broken model engine for Eli and a new fuel notebook for Noah. The boys began calling him Grandpa Harlan without asking anyone's permission. Claire appeared more slowly. She called to check on her father. Then she came to one of the boys' model vehicle competitions. She sat in the back and stayed after everyone else left. She also changed the company's safety policy. Technicians could stop a release when required test data remained incomplete. No employee could be disciplined for refusing to sign a certification unsupported by evidence. The policy carried no photograph of Grant, no promotional slogan, just a clear rule. Months after the storm, Eli and Noah decided Ranger needed a retirement party. Grant pointed out that Ranger had been retired for years. Eli said the first retirement had been military. Noah said this one was official family retirement. Harlan arrived early with a bag of dog biscuits and a paper hat Ranger refused to wear. Grant was standing beside his truck when Claire pulled into the driveway. She stepped out carrying a brown paper bag. Grant nodded toward it. "What's in there?" "Steak." "For my boys?" "For Ranger." Grant glanced toward the house. "My father said he's selective," Claire added. "He is." She looked through the open doorway. Eli was trying to place the paper hat on Ranger again. Noah was laughing. Harlan sat at the table pretending not to encourage them. Claire watched her father laugh. Then she looked at Grant. "Does this earn me another invitation?" Grant looked down at Ranger. The old dog had walked to the doorway. His tail moved once. Then again. "He likes people who show up twice," Grant said. Claire smiled. "Then I'll start with twice." Grant opened the gate. She stepped through. Ranger rose slowly and walked toward her. Then he turned and led her into the warm light of the house.